Hi guys, welcome to the YouTube channel. I'm here with Sara Hirsch and today we're going to be talking about fringes and slams and shows and all that kind of nonsense. So, hi Sara, how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm alright. So, last year you did a solo fringe show
Yes.
over at Cloaks Bar, which is not that far away from the city centre. So, tell us a bit about what that was like and like how much organisation went into that.
It was awesome, but a lot is the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was my first ever fringe. No, it wasn't my first ever fringe show in any way. It's my first ever solo show.
Yeah.
And it's really different. I've done a lot of like spots as a poet at the Fringe, or I've done like shows as an actor, but doing a solo show is very different. Takes a lot of work, and yeah, I kind of learnt the hard way, like that actually. Preparation is key.
Yeah. When did you start preparing for the Fringe? Like...
I started preparing for it like while I was at the Fringe the year before. So I started writing it. Yeah, I started writing it. I just got really inspired one day in Banshee and sat down and started writing the show. But the actual preparation was quite late. I kind of wasn't going to do it for ages and was like, oh no, I'll do that in the future. And then at the last minute was like, no, actually I will do this. So it was I think it was even as late as like sort of now time, February, March, that I decided to, I got myself in gear and was like, right, I am going to do it. And then it was kind of constant, I think, from then. But gear, like, it got a lot more intense towards the kind of May, June. It was like...
Yeah, it tends to be when it gets like really intense for like Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I saw the show.
Yes.
And it was bloody brilliant. So
thanks.
Yeah, you should be very proud of it. Like, did you feel like... find a way to phrase this question properly. Like, it was a very personal show. So, like, did you feel? How did that like affect the performance in any way? Like, and like the writing of it. Like, were you writing it going, I need to leave these bits out, or did you put everything in? Or
I'd say it was much more in the process that it affected me. When it got to performance, I was very much distanced from the subject matter, and it was much more about telling a story. But the writing process was it was kind of amazing. I wouldn't change a thing about it. I started by just putting everything down. That's not quite true. I've got like a whole other notebook which is full of personal stuff about the subject. So the show for the viewers was about a breakup of a relationship and what it is to be single for the first time since being a teenager. So quite a lot of it was autobiographical. Having said that, a lot of it was fictionalized as well. And so all of the really personal stuff just stayed in my notebook or on my phone. And then I kind of took inspiration from the stuff I was writing personally and was like, this is actually a really relatable subject matter. And so actually from that, I guess I was quite selective about what I ended up putting in the actual show, and also changed a lot of the details. So actually I'd say it was mainly just the tone and the feeling of it that was autobiographical, and a couple of the key facts. But the actual kind of story, like I kind of gave myself full rein to be as inventive as I liked. So I felt like actually during the process I got distanced from it at every single point. So by the time it was a full show, it never felt like I never felt vulnerable. It just it just felt like actually this is a story that I'm choosing the bits I want to share. And what I really loved about it in the end was that it was really relatable. And that a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I can totally relate to that. That spoke to me.
Because it was one narrative show, like everything was linked together into like the one story. I found that really impressive. Was that really difficult to kind of get together, like doing the in-between bits between poems and like linking all the poems together?
A bit, but also again, I think it was down to the process that I didn't write it as individual poems. So there was a couple of pre-existing kind of poems that ended up being part of it, but I kind of knew that was where what I was aiming for. So then all of the rest of it was just kind of like one document rather than, which I think I found a lot easier. It's the way I've approached my next show as well, rather than, I think if it was like a series of individual poems that I had to link, I think I'd have found it a lot harder. Whereas what I started with was kind of a poem, and then knew that I wanted to get to this other poem, and then I just kept the rest of it as kind of like one long story that I'd add to and swap the order. I did a massive order swap. Like 2 weeks before the Fringe, I was like, hang on a second, if we do this it makes so much more sense. But I think it was easier because it wasn't like lots of individual things. It was one long...
You didn't have to like invent audience patter and stuff like that to work your way between different things.
It was like one story, which I think that's how my brain works.
Yeah, and the space you were in as well was like really intimate. Like it was a really small space, cool. But it was really cool, and like people were packing it out and everything.
Yeah, it was really nice. I was kind of shocked because I didn't know what to expect because I've always I just didn't know.
Because you wouldn't have had a say in what venue you got into.
No, not at all. And it was a new space as well. So the Fringe hadn't used it before. It was like kind of unknown, so I just had no idea what to expect. And then it worked out really well because it was kind of perfect because it was small. When I had a like reasonable audience, it felt really full. So I think I prefer that to like having say 30 people in a massive space. Whereas actually, if 30 people turned up, like a few people had to sit on the floor, so it meant that it just it always felt really full. And which is nice because it is an intimate show and it is kind of like personal and whatever, so it felt really nice that it wasn't like shouting it into like a huge space.
Because it was a weird thing like being in that venue because it's for those of you at home, Cloaks Bar, the way the venue works is there's the bar restaurant area at the top, and then you go down some stairs, and that's normally like extra seating, but they turned it into this little cordoned off venue area, and it was really weird to like have poetry going on there while upstairs you could hear like sports channel and stuff like that, like people were shouting at the football.
But it was weird.
It never drowned you out though. Like I think it was a really good thing that venue worked as a space because you could hear it occasionally, but it wasn't like a big distraction.
I think you just make it work. And like I mean I've got quite a loud voice. And it was because I was worried because I don't use a mic. I didn't want to use the mic. Because it didn't feel like that kind of show. It didn't feel like a kind of I'm going to do a poem now. And I was a bit worried at first because on Saturdays they play football somewhere, I'm not sure where, and then people watch it and shout a lot. But it was fine actually. I think it was just a couple of times where it was. But I've heard like horror stories about venues where it's so much worse because you just expect it at the Fringe. It's going to be you're going to be somewhere random with people who don't care that you're doing a poetry show.
Did you like set out to do Free Fringe, or were you just gonna do the show regardless of how you got there?
No, I knew I wanted to do Free Fringe because I'd been up the year before and just like fell in love with the kind of community of it. And I've done paid Fringe before quite a lot with in other venues with like more theatre as an actor with more theatre shows, and I've worked at venues. And as great as it is, and it works for loud poets particularly well. But I think for kind of solo Fringe show, like spoken word shows, the Free Fringe it just feels like this awesome community. And also just in terms of what I was making, like it made it really easy. Like I was in charge of the kind of, I didn't have like some epic budget that I had to come up with from nowhere being a solo artist, and it meant that I kind of had like, I don't know, I could afford it, and it was and then I just got to keep whatever was in the bucket, and it's just I just really like that it works like that for a show like that, I think.
So how did you handle like expenses and stuff like that around the show? Because I know during August, like I was moving house while doing the Loud Poet show, so like there was a period of time where I was staying with Kev and all them in their flat, and like trying to move my stuff from my old flat to my new flat while doing the shows and stuff and flyering during the day. Like how did you sort of sway all the kind of living costs? And
I'm trying to recreate the exact same model because I was looking back really clever about it. Because so the first thing I did was I managed to rent out my room in London, which was like the biggest kind of cost saver that I could have thought of. So that was like, it meant that when I was here, that I wasn't paying to live somewhere else, which that was one thing. I did a crowdfunder, so that covered all of my accommodation, which I managed to get really, really cheap through friends. That was great. All of my travel costs were also covered by a preview that I did. So the crowdfunder covered all of the marketing, and then like some general like any props and living costs. So that was all covered. And then the show doesn't cost anything to put on, and the Free Fringe is free, obviously. And then it just meant that any money I made on the door, and I had CDs that I was selling, meant that I actually came away with a profit. I'm not quite sure how it worked.
That's impressive for the Fringe.
I was really, to be fair, that was the thing I was most proud of. Because I was just like, I think I just went into it being like, I did everything as cheap as possible. And it didn't really cost me much to be here. Which meant, so all of my expenses were covered by the crowdfunder, which was really useful. I wasn't then spending that money on rent in London.
Yeah.
And then, I managed to make money from just shaking the bucket and selling CDs. Nice. So it's kind of great. Yeah. I'm trying to do the same. Yeah. Except this year I've decided to kind of go a little bit more, like, I want to stay somewhere with like an actual bed.
Yeah.
So I've got like a budget for like...
Sofas are great, but bed is a bed.
I think I want a bed. So I'm going to be doing 2 shows this year, as well as like guest slots and all sorts of other stuff. So I think it's going to be really exhausting. Yeah. So I think a bed might come in handy. And I don't think I'll be able to rent out my room in London this year. So I'm kind of expecting it to be more costly this year. Yeah. But trying to keep a similar model where like, hopefully, you know, if someone, I don't know, like pays me again to do a preview, then that will cover travel. Like it's just, I think it's just about working it out like that. And also I've got a book coming out which is really super exciting, and hopefully we're going to tie that in with Edinburgh, and then hopefully that will maybe like boost some like bucket sales.
So people watching at home, when that eventually comes out, we'll let you know on the Lovebirds Facebook, or
buy it.
You have a Facebook?
I have a Facebook page which is Sara Hirsch Poet.
Yeah.
Which is my name.
Go like it, and then you'll know when the book comes out, and then you can pay for art.
Yeah.
It's what everyone dreams of doing.
We need to eat / drink whiskey at the Fringe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Priorities.
Yeah, priorities. So you mentioned marketing. I just wondered, like, because like when I was doing the Fringe with Loud Poets and stuff, my absolute worst like part of it was doing the flyering. Yeah, I really don't like talking to strangers, like when they don't want to talk. Yeah. So like that was probably the worst part for me, is like getting out and every day and like doing the flyering, or like almost every day and doing the flyering. So I was just wondering, best and worst kind of things about doing your own show.
The worst is definitely it's really lonely. The first kind of week of doing it was a massive shock to the system. Yeah. I'd never done anything like it. I'd always been part of, whenever I'd done Loud Poets, it was like you were flyering together for a thing, and it felt like you weren't solely responsible. Whereas doing a solo show, it's just you, and actually as amazing as the community is and everyone loves each other and supports each other, everyone's focused on their own thing at the end of the day. So the first week was very much like, oh, I'm suddenly stood on a street corner giving people like photos of my face and trying to convince them to come and see my show. Why should they choose my show? And there's all these other thousands of shows, and then I'm kind of walking to the venue on my own and setting up and doing it on my own, and it was like character building, to say the least. Like I did a lot of crying in the first week.
You build a thick skin during the Fringe.
Hugely.
Rejection is like a staple thing.
Absolutely. Because my first show was amazing. Everyone came that I knew, and then the second show it was like reality hit, and it was like 6 people there, and it's like, okay, this is the reality of it. And then from then on, it's like, okay, I've got to be out there every day. And
you've got to give the same show, because
exactly, you've got to. And like I remember I got really ill towards the middle, and kind of it was the only day I didn't flyer, because I was like, people can't come and see, I can't speak, and like 4 people turned up, and I just had to, and it is character building. I felt really proud of myself after that show. I was like, I've just done a show with no voice to 4 people, and it went well, and they liked it. So it is hard, but also like because there is, like, I think there's a huge positive side of it, which is kind of when you do when you fill a room and you know that you're kind of mainly solely responsible for that. It feels really great. But like actually it is worth it. For me, the flyering was like only a tiny part of the marketing. Like it's something you have to do for like 2 hours every day or whatever, but it was a really small part. It was, for me, it was like going on other shows and doing guest slots and then handing flyers out, or people were lovely and were like bigging up my show, and I do the same for them, and like talking about it, all the social media stuff. I had loads of fun like with Instagram, and like I don't know, having my hashtag all over the place and taking random photos of my post-it note on people's things. And
social media, like, did you use a lot of it, like, during
hugely. And I just found it really fun, because it felt like it kind of felt like I had a bit of a purpose, and I had something to talk about, and I had like I started playing like games where I'd be like, what was one of them? It was the post-it note from the show, and I had how was it for you on it, and I'd stick it on random parts of poets, and each day it was like, guess the poet. And no one, so there's a picture on Instagram of a poet's bare bum with my post-it note on it, and no one's guessed it. So if this challenge is still open, because most of them are quite obvious, and it'd be like, oh, that's like Jess Green's face, or like, I can't remember, there was someone, I think it was Tina, and she has massive hair, so it's like, that's obvious. But but no one has guessed whose arse my post-it note is stuck on Instagram. So if you find me on Instagram, Sara Hirsch, Saras89, I think I am.
Yeah.
That challenge is still open. But yeah, it was super fun. I just did stuff like that, and I had like I had all these photos of me being really emotional from the show. So it was like you had to like guess the like subtitle it or caption the photo, and people were like engaging in it, and it just kind of. So yeah, I found social media hugely effective, and Twitter. I spent like every morning tweeting reviewers or tweeting like random people who had said they were going to come and see the show and be like, oh, you know, I'm still on today at 3:30. You should come to see the show. And yeah, it felt a little bit more effective than just handing out flyers, because that's a bit of a slog.
I think like social media has really become like a thing for promoters.
Hugely.
To do for their own nights. Like you have to keep up that Twitter presence or that Facebook presence or the Instagram presence. Like you've got to be doing things regularly.
But I'm genuinely really inspired by Loud Poets, because that was like you guys own social media. I mean, you
that's all down to other people. Over it. Like I step back and let other people do that because I'm useless at Twitter.
But
like,
it's great.
People of the world, the Twitter is never me.
It's good to be honest.
Yeah, I need to be honest about my limitations. Like, I don't like marketing, apparently. That's what we've learned. But yeah, it's really interesting though, like using Twitter and Instagram and stuff, and doing like what you were doing, where it's just like random little fun things tend to be like the most effective way of getting people into your show, because everyone's like, oh, they're a good person, they have a good laugh.
Yeah,
let's go have a good laugh.
I think it's what it is, and it's engaging. Like for me, it was really engaging with like the other people doing similar stuff, and like Dan Simpson, me and Dan like shared a flat for one night, because I moved flats like 4 times in the first week while I was here, and we shared this flat for one night, and we both came up with this kind of concept of playing a game, and his one was really random nerdy stuff that he found around Edinburgh, and he'd tie that because his show was really nerdy.
Yeah.
So he did like a picture a day.
His show was really nerdy.
And it just, I think, and it's just really engaging, isn't it?
Just for the people at home, Dan Simpson's show was basically, it started off with Pac-Man, Clyde the Pac-Man, and going into all that. And then there was graphs involved, so graphs and poetry equals just the ultimate nerd.
Yeah.
We love you, Dan.
It was amazing.
But moving on from like solo shows and stuff, you also helped out at Loud Poets Fringe show.
I did.
Yeah.
Super fun.
What was that like? Please be honest.
It was great. It was it's very different. Like it's very different to what I was doing, so it's kind of nice to.
Like in what way is it different?
Well, I mean, other people were there, which was really nice. And it was like kind of on the other end of the spectrum. So you guys like filling out a paid venue, and it's like you have like lighting and sound and projection. There's a very professional feel.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice to be doing a bit of both. So doing the kind of like. Grassroots sort of like, and then to kind of go into a venue and be like, oh, my face is on a massive poster in the city centre, and have the band as well, which was so nice. So yeah, I loved it, and also it was for me. I really like doing, like having a kind of my face in a regular thing elsewhere, because it just meant that there was like 100 people a night every time I did it who would see me do something, and then. Like I would say at least like 30% of my audience must have come from Loud Poets. Yeah. Which was just hugely helpful. So just on that level, it was great. Yeah. But also just fun. It's just really fun. Yeah. And it's like a chance, because you're doing like, I don't know, an hour talking just you every day, and it's really intense. It's kind of nice to just go somewhere and do like
2
something.
poems,
Yeah, something really different, like a 3-minute fun sort of like this is a silly poem, and it's just nice to like balance it, I think.
Because I mean, that's something we tried to do when we were like thinking about what to do for the Fringes and stuff. We were like, we want to keep the kind of showcase element that we have during our monthly nights and just amp it up a little bit. Yeah. And like we found also like a really important thing for us was getting like a backstage mentality going, like where we got in people that we knew, people that could draw a crowd and like hold the audience's attention, and then like be backstage and have a joke around, and like everyone was just really relaxed.
It's a really nice atmosphere, and it kind of. I think it's really important, because the Fringe it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And it can be really lonely.
It's really stressful.
I think having like a friendly place to go where you're doing something you love and it's really fun, I think that's really important. It's really nice.
Yeah. I think just a final thing. Fringe this year coming, you say you've got a new solo show to do?
Yes.
Where's that going to be, do you know?
Yes, it's going to be at Silk, which I've just learned is a nightclub. But it's going to be on in the day, so I don't think I'll have the noise issue quite as bad as I did. It's going to be on at Silk at a time which, I should know this, but it's about 3-ish. And it's going to be me doing actually something really different, really like different for me. It's going to be quite uplifting and sweet and like storytelling-y and kind of, yeah, I'm not quite sure what it is yet. So
I'm sure we'll get you in for Loud Poets as well. Yeah. Definitely.
And I'm going to be running another. I'm also going to be doing. I've just remembered. I'm running another show for a week between the 14th and the 20th. I'm running a slam every night at Banshee, which will be super fun. It's the Genesis Slam that I'm taking up from London. So there'll be like chances for people to come along and have a slam and.
So note it all down, people.
Yes, and it will all be on my website.
Once you've noted it down, maybe like and subscribe to the video. Like, you know, get some subscriptions going there. Yeah. Sarah, thank you very much, and see you guys later.